Tonight's April 7th Courthouse Improvement Committee meeting. And I see it's 7 o'clock on the clock, so if you would join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank you, everyone, for taking the opportunity to share with us tonight. I know everybody's got busy families and busy lives, and so your participation here is absolutely appreciated, not only by myself, and I think I can speak on the rest of the commission, but also hopefully on behalf of the public as well. The meetings are online and live, so whether you're sitting in southern Sioux Falls or Hudson or Australia, people can watch our meetings, and we're online and transparent, and everybody has the opportunity to see what we're doing tonight. So please speak into the microphones when you talk so the general public can hear you, because you're not only talking to everybody inside the room, but you're talking to the public at large. We are following this practice of, if you're speaking, go ahead and take your mask off. That's not a problem. And what I do want to do is give my co-chairman, Commissioner Jim Schmidt, an opportunity to say anything if he wants to.
Thank you, Joel. Contrary to what I've heard before, that I seldom have anything to say, and I will live up to that reputation tonight. I have nothing more to add. Why do you laugh? Besides that, our auditor told me that my words tonight, I only had a limited amount of words, so I'm shepherding them very carefully.
Less is more. Okay, so the next thing we've got on the agenda for tonight is the Second Circuit presiding judge, Judge Robin Howman, who is going to give a update on what's going on in our Second Circuit.
I'm getting a thumbs up, so hopefully this will be here shortly.
Did you want the doc cam, or do you have a PowerPoint?
We sent a PowerPoint. If you didn't get it, Carl comes prepared with extras on thumb drive just for this reason. Sorry about that. So we had asked for permission to provide an update tonight based on some new numbers that have come in over the last couple of months about the growth in the caseload for Lincoln County and the Second Judicial Circuit. And we wanted to provide that update. Originally, when we gave our update back in January, we predicted that the growth of the caseload in Lincoln County had been averaging about 7 to 8% over the last decade, and we didn't anticipate that number would change very much. We got some updated numbers over the last couple of months, as I said, and I thought it was very worthwhile to provide you with that information. I want to make sure that everybody has the same information that we do. When I gave that presentation, we also noted that Harrisburg School District was growing about 300 students per year, and that seemed to kind of match the level of growth that we'd seen in our caseload. When we got the numbers for March of 2021, the district enrollment for the school had increased to 5,407 students, which was an increase of 13% since 2019. That means the Harrisburg School District itself grew 625 students over the last year, instead of the 10-year average of 300. That's something we've seen in the statistics for 2021 as we get started this year. We showed that there was a 57% growth over the last number of years, fiscal year 13 to 20, for Lincoln County's case numbers. Our March 2021 statistics are showing that growth is 87%, so up 30% over the last couple of years. And we're predicting that the case number or the case filings for fiscal year 2021 are actually going to be 10,324, which is a growth of almost 1,700 cases over the last year. Again, as I said, when we gave this presentation back in January, we were predicting that 7 to 8% growth, and it looked like it might be a fairly steady growth. We predicted based on that in fiscal year 2030 that the case numbers in Lincoln County would be about 13,500. As you can see, what we're projecting now for fiscal year 2021, we're just 3,000 shy of that growth we anticipated to occur much later in fiscal year 2030. Based on actual numbers that we're seeing over the last 6 or so months, we're actually projecting that the growth in the caseload in Lincoln County will now be growing at 19% per year as opposed to 7 to 8% that we were anticipating back in January. So if that rate holds long-term, we expect the caseload in Lincoln County to double in 5 years as opposed to the next 20 years. In January, again, we noted that there was a 226% increase in felonies. That number is actually growing exponentially. Our case numbers year to date, or fiscal year to date, show the actual filings from July to March are increasing 26%. Today, that number, Carl ran our numbers for today. As you can see at the top, it says this case filing date range, 7/1 of 2020 to 3/29 of 2021. That shows in that time period there were just 5,067 cases filed. Today, that number was 5,244. So in the last 7 days, we've actually seen some pretty substantial growth in those numbers as well. And it's not just criminal, traffic, or juvenile cases, but we're also seeing a 30% growth in family law cases over this fiscal year that we're currently in. Adding all of those cases together, this is where we get that 19% case growth average during this fiscal year. So I wanted to just put this in perspective for everybody. We anticipate, as I said, the number of cases to be filed in Lincoln County to be about 10,324 in fiscal year 2021. To put that in perspective, in fiscal year 2019, Rapid City had 21,852 cases filed there. That's the last year that I have caseload numbers for Rapid City. So that was 21,000. We expect Lincoln County to be between 10 and 11,000 this fiscal year. So that means if our growth rate maintains what we think it might over the next 5 years, that 19%, in about 5 years, Lincoln County's caseload is the same as Rapid City. Rapid City has 12 judges and 10 courtrooms. So I know these numbers sound a little bit alarming. We were a little alarmed when we saw this growth over the last couple of months, and we thought it was important enough that we bring this to your attention as well. We were kind of thinking that Lincoln County would double by 2030, and now it looks like that number is going to be far closer on the horizon and perhaps within the next 5 years. I don't want anybody to think that we're not doing anything in response, but we are pretty much limited in what we can do to respond to this growth. Some of the things that we also want you to be aware of, since we gave our presentation in January, the legislature has approved a new deputy clerk position here for Lincoln County. As of July 1st, we'll be able to hire that person. Because of the growth that we're seeing, we're also considering reallocating a second new clerk to Lincoln County sometime this summer or sometime this fall. That means that we'd have to convert an existing position within the Second Circuit to provide that additional clerk support to Lincoln County. We're also anticipating, based on this growth, that we will likely either request a new circuit court judgeship detailed to Lincoln County or a magistrate judgeship in the next legislative session. We have to have our budgets prepared and submitted to the UJS by August of this year. So by August, we will determine whether or not that new judgeship request will be for a magistrate judge or a circuit court judge. Also, in responding to the tremendous growth that we've seen over the last couple of months, we've reallocated additional judge time from Minnehaha County to Lincoln. Of course, that takes judges away from what they were doing in Minnehaha County, but we really felt that the growth that we had deserved that we plug a couple of holes here in Lincoln County and provide that additional judge support. One of the things that will do, however, is we don't really have enough space in Lincoln County to handle all of the hearings that need to be held. So on a fairly routine basis, Judge Peckus is hearing Lincoln County cases in the Minnehaha County Courthouse. We're also fairly routinely scheduling Lincoln County jury trials in Minnehaha County. Jury trials are a bit of a unique situation. Oftentimes those trials are scheduled. All of the advance work is done to make preparations to call in a jury, to have courtroom space available and whatnot, and those cases get canceled at the last minute. But still, it's a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of pressure that's placed on staff in Minnehaha County to handle Lincoln County cases. Also, at some point, there's going to be some request from Minnehaha County to account for all the space that's being provided for Lincoln County cases. We're also at our capacity in the Minnehaha County Courthouse, so this is not a long-term solution. Frankly, it's a solution that we have to utilize at this point because we don't have additional space. So there is probably going to be a request in the next few months to find alternative locations for court hearings here in Lincoln County. Another thing that we've done is we've reallocated additional judge time, magistrate judge time from Minnehaha County to Lincoln, but again, we run up against those space issues, and we've actually had to probably push off some magistrate trials in order to gain that additional time for magistrate judges to hear cases here in Lincoln County. There's also a number, as a result of this tremendous growth in case numbers, we've had a lot of compression in the judges' calendars or tightening. So for example, the criminal calendars are booked through pretty much the end of May, and civil calendars are booked into July. So that means if you're a parent in a custody dispute and something immediate comes up that needs a judge's attention, the first time you're gonna find space on a calendar is July, because that's when it is available. So to respond to some of those issues, we're going to be double booking or stacking hearings, which means that we might set 2 different divorce trials for the same day, hoping one of them settles. And in the event that one does not settle, somebody's not going to get their day in court for another couple of months because we just don't have the judge time or the space to provide to meet those cases. And again, I've already mentioned that we're routinely hearing matters in Minnehaha County and setting trials there. Again, these are not long-term solutions, but they're the best that we can do to meet these immediate needs. So I wanted to make sure everybody had this information, and if there are any questions, I would entertain any of those questions from anyone.
I have one.
Sure.
Is this space not available to use adequately for a courtroom?
We are using this space.
Oh, you are? Okay.
We do use this space for jury trials.
The other issue, I would just note, Betty, just so you know, too, the proceedings that are recorded, in other words, where we don't have a court reporter sitting there, we don't have the recording system set up in here. So we're a little bit limited in that capacity as well, because it's an internal recording system that picks everything up, and we can't do that in here because it's not hooked up to the UJS system. So, you know, we are using it when we can for jury selection and things of that matter, or that nature when we can.
Anyone else with questions? Yes.
If the UJS is gonna assign another judge, say in August in either a circuit or magistrate, where would that judge be able to office out of?
We would designate that as a permanent Lincoln County position.
Is there room in the courthouse right now to accommodate another judge?
Well, Judge Peckus has an office. Judge Rasmussen has an office. There is a smaller office that judges have utilized before. We've routinely had issues with the humidity and air quality in that office. So I can't answer that question honestly right now.
Thank you.
Judge Peckus, you're here. You came specially for tonight. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Thank you. Thanks, Judge. The only thing I would add is that with the trial situation and COVID, a lot of it is because of social distancing. And so we have a substantial number of criminal cases, and of course, Judge Rasmussen can speak to that better than I can, but we have a number of those cases that need to be brought to trial. And so when we have civil cases, they have to take second priority to our criminal docket because we have some individuals, believe it or not, that haven't been able to bond out since COVID started, and so they naturally want to have their hearings. And so those jury trials that we have, we end up utilizing courtroom 3A, 2B, and we have motions in limine outside the presence of the potential jurors, typically in 3A, and even this room has been utilized as well. And so when we're talking about having those trials up in Minnehaha County, a lot of times those could be circumstances where the state's attorney has a criminal case that he wants to bring, a felony case, or even a misdemeanor case, and we have to utilize the space that we have here in Lincoln County for that criminal trial. And so frequently, we end up utilizing, for lack of a better term, Minnehaha County as our lifeboat to go ahead and to have a lot of our civil hearings. And that's been utilized substantially because we do have a large number of criminal cases that have been backlogged. We're working those through. That'll get better in the future, but as Judge Howman indicated, the numbers speak for themselves. We have a large number of civil cases that are rapidly getting filed in Lincoln County, and Lincoln County, in and of itself, has more civil cases, I believe, than the Fourth Circuit, and they have Fourth Circuit judges in the Fourth Circuit. So to give you guys an idea about that, we are doing a huge volume of legal work for the state of South Dakota in Lincoln County, and that's a challenge. And as Robin indicated, Judge Howman, we are working as best we can to try to be as efficient with what we have and to be to recognize the work that Judge Howman and Judge Rasmussen, what they've done is, literally, I remember Ken McFarland used to describe the fact that in county government, we can all pull the lint out of our pockets and knit a sweater. And that's what we're good at here in county government. And I know Lincoln County is also doing that as well. I want you to know that the UJS, at least in the Second Judicial Circuit, Robin is turning those lint balls into also sweaters, and with the help of Judge Rasmussen. And I really think that eventually Lincoln County is going to have to realize that you are one of the flagship counties when it comes to the unified judicial system, and that we're probably going to need some more space. So these are good problems to have. I know I was talking to a colleague actually down in Kansas, and they almost have the exact opposite problem. They don't have a lot of individuals moving into rural Kansas, and it's always nice to have growth in a community, but it presents unique challenges. But you know, once again, I know that this commission can rise to the occasion. So anyway, thanks for asking me, Robin.
Judge, I have a question. Sure. Whether or not the public knows this or not, judges don't work in isolation. They have court reporters, they have clerks, they have court services officers, they have law clerks. What kind of space needs do you have for those other kinds of personnel that work in the Second Circuit? You know, for law clerks, court services officers, people who do all of the back end work that maybe we don't necessarily think of right away when we're thinking about space needs.
I'm not sure I understand the question. I think the proposal or the numbers that Andrew's worked through include space for additional court services officers. It includes space for additional court clerks. I don't think we've included any additional space for additional court reporters because we can't find court reporters in this country anymore. So we're wiring all of our courtrooms for CourtSmart, planning for not having many court reporters in the future. But I think if you look at just the doubling of numbers and compare that to the presentation I gave last time, which I don't have with me now, but we anticipated, I believe it was in 2030, that if we had all of our needs met, that would be 33 employees for the UJS in Lincoln County. Of course, that was based on numbers that maybe we're not anticipating today. So I think we really need to put additional pen to paper and figure out what that means in terms of the number of staff.
Are there immediate space needs that you have right now today?
In Lincoln County?
Yes.
Well, yeah, because Judge Peckus has just been talking about him not having space here in Lincoln County to actually hear civil and family law hearings. So by consent of the parties, those are being heard in Minnehaha County, but that's taking away space from Minnehaha County to utilize to hear cases.
What
And the
is
same
that?
for trials.
What is that space that you need then immediately? You know, does that mean one courtroom? Does that mean two courtrooms? Does it need an extra office for a court services officer? Does it need an extra office for a legal clerk? What are the immediate needs that need to be brought forward to the commission to consider? Because obviously, a new courthouse may not get approved by the public, or if it does get approved, it'll take 18 months to build, and we're just not there yet. So what do we need to do in the meantime to get us there? What's the bridge that we have to build?
Well, thank you. That's a good question, Commissioner Aaron's. And in my experience, I was on the commission when we decided to put 2 floors on the existing courthouse, and there were challenges related to that. And one of the situations that we had is to look into the crystal ball and decide how much space do we really need. You can't build a courthouse for, of course, some future number that we may not ever reach. I think Bob Colby used to say you can't build the cathedral to fill Christmas and Easter. I mean, you build it for what you need right now. You can't build it for some pie-in-the-sky number, and that's absolutely right. I would say that it would be nice if we could have immediately an extra courtroom, period. And that would help relieve the pressure that we have up in Minnehaha County. But one of the other situations that is the tempest in the teapot is that we have COVID. And unfortunately, that has created new challenges related to the emergency orders that we have. And at least at this point, part of the compression that we've been describing is because of the spacing needs, the social distancing, even in this room, that we have to try to accommodate people related to the pandemic. And that's going to be a challenge, but I think that's going to be resolved in the future. It would be nice if we could have a courtroom where I could go ahead and hear family law cases that are unfortunately having to get moved up to Sioux Falls. I do believe that COVID does create a unique circumstance where Lincoln and Minnehaha County have always worked well together with our memorandums of understanding related to emergency situations. If COVID-19 isn't one of those emergency situations, I don't know what it would be. And so if Minnehaha County, I think, started pushing back on Lincoln County, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to go ahead and to invoke the MOU.
Does the one courtroom that you immediately need to also have jury capability?
That would be nice, but the reality is that the vast majority of the work that I do, I don't have to have a jury. And so I would say no in the interim. Long-term, you're going to want to be able to accommodate a jury. But as COVID hopefully wanes in the future, we do have courtrooms that can accommodate a jury. And so I do think that we could do that. But it is not a stretch of the imagination to imagine that Lincoln County in the future is going to someday have 3 jury trials going at the same time. That will be 2 criminal and 1 civil.
Judge, could I ask, is it possible to put that CourtSmart system in this room and talking with Jim Schmidt, there's one needed downstairs in the interim short term to use this as a courtroom?
Well, the Court Smart system isn't something that's readily available for a temporary installation. It's quite expensive system. We just updated the Court Smart court systems up in Minnehaha County, and I'm gonna look to Carl, $25,000 to $30,000 a courtroom plus licensing fees.
Something
It's-
like that, Judge, and if I could, it's not just the cost, and it's not just the software and the licensing. You might think a remote recording system is relatively easy, but there are cameras in the ceilings, there are recording pickups for each speaker in the courtroom, you know, both attorneys, the witness box, the judge, and so it's an extensive installation. It's not a temporary sort of thing.
And also a staff member to monitor that.
Judge, looking at the immediate situation is one thing, but as we look at the future, and that's one of the things that we've been entrusted with, I think you said by 2030, we could expect to have 7 courtrooms? Was that something you
Well,
mentioned?
what I mentioned was if we continue on this rate of growth, so this year we'd have between 10 and 11,000 cases, growing at 19%. In 5 years, we're doubling that. And if we do double that in 5 years, the caseload in Lincoln County will be akin to what it is in Pennington County. And Pennington County has, I want to make sure I tell you the right number.
I think it's 5 circuit judges and 3 magistrates.
Yeah, they have 12 judges total and 10 courtrooms to handle 22,000 cases per year,
So we could be there in
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Not a question, but just a comment. This is our 4th meeting now since we've started this, and we have digested a lot of great information up to tonight. And probably my feeling is in the first 10 minutes of your presentation, my opinion went from we have a serious situation to we have a critical situation. And I'm looking at this committee now in a whole new light of not only doing it right, but doing it quickly. And I'm just curious if the other committee members are feeling the same.
And I might just add, thank you, Mr. Skiles, for your comments. In Minnehaha County, as I said, we're out of space. We can add 1 more judge. We can add 2 more clerks to our staff, maybe 3. And then we're kicking people out of the building, such as our UJS IT staff, which you can imagine in a courthouse with 140 employees, 21 courtrooms, we need IT staff. So the next people that I'd look at kicking out are the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, another Justice of the Supreme Court, and a couple of law clerks. So we are essentially out of space. And I don't think the building can go up, and I don't know where we'd go out. So I think that's something that this committee needs to keep in mind too, that we expect, perhaps in 5 or 6 years, the caseload is going to double in Lincoln County. What's it gonna do the next 10 years or the next 15 years? And what can we do now to be really forward thinking about where that growth is gonna come? And it's not just gonna be the courthouse, it's gonna be all of the other departments, because as our caseload grows, that's a reflection of the growth in the county.
To spin off of Judge Peckas's comments a moment ago, I think COVID has had some drastic impact on how we do things. But I do want to emphasize as well that spacing and the extra needs that we have for COVID are related to jury trial situations. Selecting a jury, not cramming 60 people into the courtroom upstairs shoulder to shoulder to pick a jury. Instead, we split them up in different rooms and one just listens in by Zoom. So those are issues. The items that are not COVID-related, I think, are the vast majority of our issues. They are the criminal cases overlapping with juvenile cases, overlapping with abuse and neglect cases, overlapping with small claims, protection orders. You a lot of times have civil cases or family cases on those days as well. It is mainly the day-to-day caseload, and unfortunately, it feels like we're trying to play catch-up all the time. So even an immediate courtroom right now would help ease the burden, but I don't even know if one would be adequate to really do what we need to do to not have cases booked months and months out. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit. And we are, as Judge Howman indicated, we are doing absolutely everything we can right now. We're starting court earlier in the morning, we're taking shorter lunch breaks, we're doing really everything that we can right now to get the cases handled in the most expeditious manner possible.
And I know there's a lot of other people who want to speak with you tonight, so I'm going to sit down. But I'd be happy if anybody's got any questions when we're done here tonight. I'd be happy to answer those. And I don't know how to take this out, so I'm going to leave it to technology folks.
Thank you. Next thing we're going to do on the agenda here is I will flip-flop 3 and 4. What's going to happen is Andrew will come up. He will give a short presentation of what each of the department heads are looking for, and then he will invite you up, I think in alphabetical order or however you want to come up. And you can each give your presentation or comments as to what you think your space needs are. So Andrew will kind of shepherd you guys through that.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Eatram with Architecture Incorporated, and as Commissioner Ahrens mentioned, tonight we're going to focus on the rest of the departments in the admin portion of the courthouse facility. Previously, we had reviewed the work that we had done with UJS for programming on the court side. We also reviewed the work that we had done for programming with the Sheriff's Department and also the state's attorney. And so tonight we will run through all of the rest of the departments that occupy this building. So our process, we had categorized all of the square footage in the two structures and assigned those to the various departments to establish a baseline of the amount of square feet that they currently have. We had meetings with John and each of the department heads to talk to them about what works with their current space, what doesn't work, how much growth in employees they may anticipate in a 5 to 10 year window is what we discussed with each of the department heads. And then based on that potential growth and the understanding of what their current space needs were, we have programmed additional square footage for each of those departments. So what we will run through here quickly, I do have these in alphabetical order for each of the different departments. We show, for example, on auditor, what the current space is that they occupy. So net square feet. Then the second line in each of these is the estimated or anticipated growth in employees. So again, for auditor, they anticipated in the 5 to 10 year window to grow by 2 for a total of 8. And then the last line item for each of the departments is what that result is for additional space needs within their department. So again, referencing the auditor, with their current layout and the current utilization of space, it was discussed, and we believe that those 2 additional employees can be housed within their current square footage. So that's one of the examples of a department that's anticipating some growth, but it could be accommodated in their existing footprint. So I can run through, it does not matter to me, Commissioner Aaron's, I can run through each of these, and we can give the department heads an opportunity
Yeah, I
to
think-
address or to come up and speak if they'd like.
Yeah,
Or
I think
can-
each department head, they can come up, say their piece, explain why they need what they need, and we can ask them questions if we need to. Start out with our auditor.
So, looking over the numbers, I'm just gonna probably need a total of 2 employees. I have the space in my office to accommodate up to 4 new employees. So I don't think I need additional space. Fortunately, I'm not, pushed for space, but is there any questions?
For the record, you are down one position. You have cut one position from what you had before,
Yep.
correct? Yeah.
Yep.
So actually, if replacing that would put you back, if you placed one, you would be back to normal. So one additional one may be required, just so people understand that you're not adding really 2 new people. You have 1 less employee right now than you started with.
Correct. Yep.
And Sherry, is this your space need within the next 5 to 10 years, or can you flush out what the timeline is for this?
Yeah, I would say 5 to 10 years. I do have ample space in the office with the open area by the counters, and the counters are long enough to where I could even accommodate people up there. So I think the only thing we would really need would be storage space, but everybody's got that need. But in my direct office where we're working, I think we've got adequate space.
When Andrew went through and did the needs assessment, did you discuss that issue of storage space with him then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that was kind of everybody's got the storage space downstairs, so we're all tied together on it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so that's a good clarification. Any of the departments that are currently have storage that they're utilizing in the basement of the original courthouse, John helped, because in some rooms down there, there are multiple departments in one space. John helped get us approximate square footage to assign to each, and so those basement square footage numbers that they're utilizing for storage are wrapped up in this. So, the auditor's office adjacent here is not 3716, it's 3716 less some square footage in the basement. Just
Okay.
clarification. Next, conservation office, just a single office, at 152 square feet. No employee or space needs growth anticipated. Equalization, currently occupy 3,114 square feet. Anticipated growth of 2 employees for a total of 18, and future space needs of 3,997, which is a net increase of just shy of 900 square feet.
Good evening, Carla Gosen, Lincoln County Director of Equalization. So, I don't know why I say so. It's better than, right? We anticipated an additional 2 employees for a total of 18 employees. The calculation of the additional square footage and spacing, I would ask, the architect to maybe go over and explain. Late yesterday, we, in our office, took a look at some workload projections, And we were also very concerned on what is happening in Lincoln County. And I would like to go through a couple workload projections that recently came to light in Lincoln County in regards to property transfers, building permits that are being issued from year to year, plattings, new developments. Some of the numbers were very concerning. In Harrisburg, we're seeing from last time, or at this time last year versus current, a 22% increase in building permits. The year prior to that was an 11%, so it's jumping at approximately 11 to 22% in any given year. T, from 2019 to 2020, we've seen an increase in building permits of 40%. In 2020, the amount of building permits issued, and these are single-family residences. These are strictly single-family residences numbers. They issued 71 new home permits in 2020. What we have received as of March of 2021 is 65. So they had 71 building permits for the total year of 2021. As of today's date, or March of 2021, 65. We're nearly ahead of last year's total new home permits. In Sioux Falls, it remains very stable. Last year, new home permits in Sioux Falls, well, we had a total new home permits in the county last year of 889. Right now, which does not include Lenox, Fairview, Worthing. I wasn't able to gather that data before tonight's meeting. We're in the upwards of 450 permits. So, and we're only 5 months into the 2021 year. Some of the other numbers that I have prepared for you this evening in regards to the need for additional staffing. Since November 1 of 2020 to March of 2021, we have created in our office 500 new parcels. Now, does that mean 500 new homes? Not always, but it gives us an indication on how fast Lincoln County is growing in parcel counts. Some of those numbers are new developments that are being platted and developed, that will be developed. New home permits will be obtained from each taxing jurisdiction. Some other numbers that I had presented to the commission yesterday, platting from 2020 during this 2020 to this time now this year has increased 60%. The amount of platting that have been filed in the Register of Deeds. Property transfers from November 2019 to March of 2020, there were 1,100 property transfers filed in the Register of Deeds. Same time frame this year, November 2020 to March of 2021, 1,518, so 35% increase in property transfers. I guess, you know, when I look at the needs for, when I projected with the memo that I created for ARC Inc., we projected 2 additional employees. It makes me, you know, maybe think we needed more. But when I look at the trending and all the history of what's happened, you know, in property transfers, building permits, you know, there's always, you know, there's There's really high years, there's some low years, you know, but the trend, if you put them on a bell curve, it's going up. And it's a constant up. There are some slight dips, can account for some of those dips, but if you look at the trend, it's definitely in an upward trend. Spacing, the 800 additional square feet, I'm not sure how that was calculated. Can you explain that? Okay. Do you have any questions?
Carla, the current setup that you have upstairs, your office is kind of across the hallway there. If there were, you know, is that the best way to do it for you? Or if the space were to be reconfigured, would you have an office inside of the equalization office? Or, you know, do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure, yes. So my office is not within the main office. I like that. I think having some, you know, space for myself to talk with taxpayers or commissioners or other department heads, I think just having that spacing is adequate. I really do. I think our biggest spacing needs comes in the disjointment of, we have property record cards in this room, and we have old assessment history books in another room, and it's disjointed. I think that's how I described it in my memo to the board. Our space is disjointed. There's not all of the needs in one location. You have to go to multiple locations to sometimes find the information that we're looking for. Some of it's in the basement, some of it's across the hall, some of it is, where did it go, you know, type situations. So that's probably our biggest spacing needs, not so much my office is across the hall from the main office. I don't find that, you know, a disjoint at all. Especially when I have visited, you know, other counties such as Minnehaha, Pennington, that's very normal.
Does your space request then take into consideration trying to unify those needs? So your staff isn't walking all over them?
I believe so. I think and I don't want to speak for himself, but in the conversation that we had with ARC Inc. and myself and Deputy, a lot of our spacing needs for addition is when we redesigned our office space, we put in some of our desks to fit the space. So some of our desks are extremely small. Well, it doesn't provide the best source of workspace for some. It does for others, you know, so I'm thinking about 75% of our staff, that's adequate space for workspace for them, but the other 25%, it's not. But we put those workstations in to fit the space that we were working with instead of trying to get more space. And that, I'm guessing, is some of that additional spacing needs.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that that was part of the equation or calculation. The solution that we came up with was the reason there's almost 900 square feet for just 2 additional employees is in a recent remodel of new furniture to fit more people in the space, then the workstations got smaller and really aren't meeting the needs of the staff. And so this was saying that, you know, part of their space needs is not just adding those 2 employees, but it's getting the right size of workstations for the rest of the staff that's currently there.
Does it also take into concern the belief expressed about the storage space for the cards and all those things as well?
Yeah, we had made some adjustments to those spaces as well. Any other questions on equalization? Next, Highway Department, currently occupy 851 square feet. Anticipated a growth of 2 employees for a total of 4. And to clarify, that would be employees housed in this building, not the full Highway Department, obviously. But they had no additional space needs anticipated. You know, we could reconfigure within that 851 square feet.
Since Terry could not be here tonight, I told him I would speak on behalf of him on this. So basically, in discussion with Terry, he could see in the future where he could have some benefits from having a draftsperson and an engineer, something that we currently hire out. So he could see that potentially in that 10-year mark where there would be a benefit to having those type employees in his staff, and they would be located in this facility or at least separate from the actual highway department guys. And so that's where those numbers came up with. He currently has a pretty adequate space right now that his main entryway has kind of got a lot of unused space, but just the way it's designed, you can't really subdivide it to utilize it for an additional office right now. So that's kind of how that all came up. And that's why, despite the fact that he's needing potentially 2 employees, he doesn't have an additional need in space because we're just going with actually the space per square foot that he owns.
Right. Thanks, John.
Next up is Human Resources, currently occupy just 210 square feet, anticipating a growth of 3 employees for a total of 4. And so the programming we did came out to 1,000 square feet for Human Resources, which is a net add of 790 square feet.
Good evening, Julia Disberg, HR Director. These numbers do need some adjustment. Recently, as I'm sure most of you know, the commission was supportive of granting Susan Irons and I a joint position. So we're currently in the recruitment process, so I will be adding 0.8 FTE here shortly. These numbers don't reflect that individual. So actually my request, I anticipate, will be 2 additional employees on top of that 0.8 FTE. So to go through a little bit of the spacing needs, what I anticipate or have in mind for these 2 individuals is a recruiter and training individual. So they'll focus on just recruitment and training for the employees. And then the other individual will specialize in benefits, which also includes FMLA, workers' compensation, things of that nature. So as far as the future space needs, I will reiterate the need for additional space. What's tricky with Human Resources, if you want to call it tricky, is that it was hard to find a confidential space. So previously, I was in with the WIC office. I soon received feedback that it wasn't confidential, and applicants and other people in the waiting room could actually hear the conversation. So everyone was completely supportive of me moving. So now I'm located in the old part of the building in the Sally Port. Is that what it's called? Kind of offset of the Sally Port?
It's near the Sally Port.
Okay. Yes, the old law library. That's where I'm currently at. Frankly, I'm still getting some feedback that it's not confidential. They can hear through the door when I'm on the phone, so that's tricky. I try to just minimize the conversations when needed, knowing if people are outside. So with all of that said, the reason for the additional space is 3 confidential offices with doors, and then some additional space for a conference room housing 6 to 8 individuals that we can specifically use for interviewing. Right now, there is an issue with finding a spot, a consistent spot for interviewing. What's happening is, of course, the judges get precedence. They're in the multipurpose room, which is typically housed for or used for interviews. So then we kind of shift to a different spot. So then we utilize the now the detective suite That's not ideal either because we're having to go through different departments in this confidential recruitment process. So it would be nice to have a confidential space to have confidential conversations. So that is kind of the outlay and my thought process behind the hires. So this was an interesting process for me because, as you know, human resources supports employees, departments, department heads, and then also applicants. So we had this conversation and we came up with this, and then we got together and saw the full report. So we went through and totaled the number of employees that is being requested, and it's roughly 52 employees within the next 5 to 10 years. Right now, that's a 35% increase to where we're currently at, and we're not even fully staffed. So what does that mean? Do you mind if I utilize this contraption? Can I do that? Thanks. I like how Jake knows what I meant by that. So here are just some of the function this Office of One oversees. These are some of the responsibilities. I anticipate that the growth of 35% growth in employees, these areas will also increase by 35%. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more data. I put together, recruitment seems to be the hot topic, right? I mean, that's easily trackable. And that is, this office is about 20% of the responsibilities, but I thought you might find this interesting. So here outlines some data from 2018, 19, and 20 on current recruitment. So terminations is just people who leave the organization. But here's where we were in 2019. 2020, here's where we ended up. This is the overall turnover rate of last year. Healthy turnover is 8 to 10% typically. Now, that's not all bad, right? But here at county, our demographics are such that a lot of our tenured employees are now starting to retire. So that's what we're starting to see. So I anticipate, instead of this going down, this is probably going to continue to go up for the next couple years. So this includes natural attrition, of course. We can't convince everyone to stay, right? We wish they would, but we can't. But it also includes that natural retirement that are coming. Here's where we're at currently as of April. So far, we've lost 6 people at county. We've hired 9, that includes part-time and full-time. These are the positions that we've currently posted. Right now, we've posted 14 positions. We have 2 to come within the next couple weeks. And then here's the number of people that were currently in process. So what does that mean? Anywhere from we've started the interview process to offers have been extended to background process, things of that nature. So here's the turnover rate as of April. Just a little bit of information. I thought you might find that interesting, where we were last year, where we're at now. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next up is IT. Current space of 1,080 square feet, a growth of 3 employees for a total of 6, and future space needs of 1,500 square feet, so a net gain of 420 square feet.
Afternoon, Jake Oakland, Lincoln County IT Director. The need for my growth is pretty much based off of how many county employees we have. So depending on each department, how many new hires that they have, new positions, that's going to increase the growth. So I did the best guesstimate that I could come up with, and I would say I'm being pretty conservative. I also added a meeting room for the IT department so that we could all meet in one space. We don't currently have something like that. And it would also help with training new individuals coming in, get them trained on all of our equipment, how to use the equipment, and move forward. I thought 3 would be good. I actually have a new full-time employee here that we're working in the process of getting hired, so that will be a great benefit for us. But the IT needs for Lincoln County are astronomical. I've been here for 10 years, and it's blown me away. I mean, when I first started, we had 50 computers. Now we're up to 250, and that's just in a 10-year period. And that doesn't include all the users that we have to support as well. So the more I think about it, the more I would actually like to increase it, because we are seeing more and more of a need where we have more IT staff that is specialized in certain departments to help aid them in their software and work with that. Like an example would be the sheriff's office. They have a very CAD program that would, be beneficial to have an IT support right there to be able to generate the reports they're looking for, to help aid them in any type of thing they're trying to pull out of that system. Property tax right now is a huge system that is very reliant. Like, we have to make sure everything is working and it's working correctly in that system. So it's great to have someone that's specialized in that. Currently, right now, I'm kind of that person. I do have a second person that is helping, but it's hard to keep up. And I think I've been conservative for way too long, to be honest with you. Another need on that was an AV room. One part with the AV room, I'm kind of going to go off, it's kind of a side for my department, is this chambers is just not adequate for what we need. I mean, even now with the COVID restrictions, it's way too small. To get the necessary equipment in here for people to be able to view what the commissioners are showing, to be able to have live stream, to be able to do anything to make it better for everybody in the room, it's just difficult and it's expensive, just because of the limitations of this room. I mean, the room that we have in the back is just tiny. We would love to have that increased. We want to make it easier for the public. Another thing I would like to bring up is the IT department is kind of the managers of the multipurpose room and the commissioner's room for scheduling. And I feel for the courtrooms because the court system, because they are constantly reserving these rooms, constantly. And it's affected our county administration side significantly. And we definitely need to come up with something to solve that problem. Other than that, do you have any questions?
Jake, how much you're using that for elections as well? Has that grown as well? Because I know you're instrumental in processing and making sure that we have all these elections and they're fair.
I would always recommend, and contrary to popular belief, an election room, a dedicated election room is a necessity. The equipment is so sensitive, and the rooms we have for our elections are not adequate. We are growing, we have more population, and we're almost to a point where we would even need another machine. And there is definitely not enough room to fit all of those people in a room just to be able to process ballots. Sorry, auditor.
You taking notes, Andrew?
But other than that, because of being part, I would like to add too, because of being part of the multipurpose room and commissioner room scheduling, we definitely need more rooms, even for the court system, for the administration system, sheriff. We need conference rooms. We need group rooms where we can meet with citizens and sit down with them and show them what they're asking, help them, guide them. It would be hugely beneficial for us as a whole.
Jake, do you also provide some IT services for the court staff as well?
We aid where we can.
Okay.
If there's an emergency or is there anything, we are completely willing to help as much as we can.
Jake mainly helps us with scheduling and booking either the multipurpose room downstairs, commission room up here, or brainstorming where we can try to fit in extra court hearings and meetings on the court side of things, and it's much appreciated.
Yes.
I know you have better things to do than help us schedule, so we appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Jake.
We did have a brief discussion on voting with the auditor. and there are 2 spaces right now. There's a multi-purpose and a voting storage room. The discussion was, the one is quite a bit larger, almost double the size, that the functions within those spaces would function better if those spaces were just flip-flopped and the uses were switched. So that was documented in here. So there's no net square footage gain. It's just switching around the uses of some of those spaces. Next is planning and zoning and GIS. Currently together occupy 2,074 square feet. Planning and zoning had anticipated growth of 2 employees for a total of 6. Likewise, GIS growth of 3 employees for a total of 5. And we had programmed a total space of just shy of 3,000 square feet, which was a net gain of 896 square feet.
Toby and John, don't rush up there.
We're roommates, so we get used to each other. So, Toby Brown, Planning and Zoning Director for Lincoln County. Jake, if you can throw on the .cam ones for me. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what the current department is for planning and zoning. So in planning and zoning, we have 5 positions. Administrative assistant that we do share with GIS. In 2016, GIS moved into our conference room and our planning and zoning office because their space was utilized by Department of Equalization. So we do utilize shared, phone assistants and walk-in assistants. And then we have a planner, that's Joan Doss. Jennifer Cleveland, she's our administrative assistant. Then we have a building inspector / code compliance officer. And I've scheduled kind of workflow for those 2 individuals. So the first person, that's Joel Carlson. He does our code review and compliance. So anytime you submit a building permit, then Joel reviews it, determine that it meets code, and he also does our compliance. So the planning and zoning department, we're also the nuisance officer for the county. So all complaints that are dealing with properties and those different types of things, our staff deals with. So Joel does a lot of the investigations and processes, takes us through the state's attorney's office and ultimately to the court system, where we try to get some remedy on some of those types of issues. Our second building inspector, and that's Keith Holter. He does the on-site building inspection, so he's the boots on the ground. He goes out and does all the building inspections for the county. We also do shared services with Minnehaha County, so we provide staffing for them if they have conflicts of interest or if they have scheduling needs and stuff like that. So we do quite a bit this year, actually, with services from Minnehaha County. And I should say, one thing I'm proud of our department is we didn't shut down at all. So we continued building inspection. We were one of the only departments in the nation that did not shut down. So our inspector was boots on the ground all the time out there with safety precautions, but we made sure that inspections were completed. Of course, the director. So I put myself on the bottom because I answer the phone, I do everything. If you come in the office, you're talking to me as well. So in one way, listening to Judge Howman, I kind of feel like maybe I'm underplanning, that maybe we do need additional staffing and stuff like that. But I did anticipate 2 additional staff, and I'll kind of walk through a little bit of what those are. So the first thing is, everyone talks about population. Well, the one thing that we're going to have is when we hit 50,000 population, which will be, of course, the census, we're going to have some additional requirements. One of those big requirements is going to be MS4 requirements. That's a federal mandate down to the local authorities. So right now, we're just getting into the detention ball game. So a lot of our developments, you'll hear a lot of people talking about, they don't have detention. We've never required detention. We are requiring detention on sites. This takes us a step further and says, we're going to have an additional pond for sedimentation. So for each development, they're going to have to make sure that that stormwater runoff is going to be clean and it's going to go off the property. That's a huge requirement. Those are additional standards that our citizens, that are taxpayers, they're going to have to become educated on that process, and they're going to have to know how the proper way to do that is. Not only that, but the permitting part of it. The second thing is we're in the midst of adopting a master drainage plan for the county. We've had 3 public hearings on that. We've routinely heard that the county needs to get into the drainage game. We need to have a permit for drainage, tiling, all that kind of stuff. I'm not a politician, I'm just a planner. So all those things are going to have to be decided by our commissioners. But the demand's going to be there. That's going to require, in my mind, we're going to issue, the first year that we have drainage permit, we're going to issue more drainage permits in the county than building permits. We're flat, we're wet, it doesn't flow. So we're going to have a lot of issues there. The second thing is joint jurisdictional planning and zoning. Currently, we have a joint jurisdictional planning and zoning agreement with the city of Sioux Falls. Our staff at the county does 99% of the work for that. We do all the staffing, the permitting, the applications, set up the meetings, all those different types of things. And so we also have pending application for the city of Harrisburg, the city of Worthing, the city of Lennox, the city of T. They're all going to want that type of an agreement. That requires additional staffing, additional requirements and needs. In addition to that, I'll piggyback off what Jake said, is that we utilize, we staff the planning commission, which utilizes this space. The space is not adequate. It's not adequate for our public hearings. It's not adequate for the meetings. It doesn't provide a great opportunity for public participation, which is what this is all about. And so, in saying that, piggybacking that off the joint jurisdiction, because the joint jurisdiction for the planning and zoning with Sioux Falls, they come down here, but we're running into issues where we can't get everybody up here with COVID. Even before COVID, we can't get a full up here. So currently what I do with the planning commissions with City of Sioux Falls and with ours is we limit it to just the quorum. So that's limiting the ability to have a full board participate in those discussions and make those decisions. And I feel bad about that, but there's no spacing needs that I have to accomplish that. So one of the things we're talking about is actually moving those meetings up to the City of Sioux Falls, because they have the space, the accommodations, the technology. The challenge there is my staff's here. If we go up there, we're not gonna have access to technology. We're not gonna have access to the things that we need. Next thing is building inspection additional hours. In Lincoln County, we have a short window for building, and it's getting even shorter, it seems, every year. And so when they need to build things, when they need to pour concrete, they need it when they need it. And so we currently operate a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We have a huge demand right now to do after 5 p.m. and on weekends. Our staff does a good job. Sometimes they'll do it on the way home, on their personal time and things like that. But there comes a time when we're going to need additional staff to staff some of those things. The demand is there. I'm not creating that. That's a demand from the citizens of the county. The next thing is really what the county needs to look at is adoption of mechanical code. So we're covered on electrical, plumbing, building, and general building and things like that. What we don't have is mechanical code. A lot of counties don't have mechanical code. That's your HVAC systems. But that's where you're going to notice the biggest problems that we have with building is the HVAC stuff. And so that's an additional service that we need to provide. And when I say that, when you look back at our building permits, and everybody's, has already said everything about the numbers and all that other stuff is true. We're growing. The numbers don't go down. They peak, they go, but they're going high. But the problem is that when I look back, the average house back 10 years ago was 1,400 square feet. We're permitting today 5,000, 6,000 square foot houses. I mean, it's unreal the amount of inspections and requirements that we have to have. The second thing would be property maintenance code. So the county doesn't have a property maintenance code. We do have structures in the county that have life safety issues. People should not be living in them. People shouldn't be around them. But we don't have the code really in place to protect us from that. With that, though, that requires some additional steps, stipulations, requirements, court processes that need to take place. The next item is on-site wastewater system inspection. So in Lincoln County, primarily, we don't have any collection type wastewater systems, so every house out there, every business out there is on their own individual system. The issue with that is that they fail, and they're not installed properly. So a few years back, the county adopted an ordinance that required on-site wastewater systems to be designed by a licensed engineer. And that's a unique requirement. We're the only county in the state that requires that. That adds an additional $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to every building permit because of that requirement. I would like to say that we could do a better job of just inspecting those systems instead of requiring a design of the system before then. The next part is nuisance abatement. So again, as I mentioned before, we're the nuisance officer for the county. We have nuisance issues, and as we grow and as we continue to grow, and as the density continues to increase, that's where we have a lot of issues with neighbors being neighbors and not being neighbors. And so we have a lot of issues with those. We take it to the steps we need to take it with. We've taken a number of those to the court processes, but ultimately the court processes say abate it. But we don't have the staffing and we don't have the budget to complete those types of items. The next thing, and I'll leave it with this, is the planning and zoning ordinance updates. So as you're all aware, there's an initiated measure for marijuana legalization in the state, July 1st. And so on July 1st, they can come into our office and we'll issue a building permit for a dispensary in the county. Now, there's some requirements that the state will have that they won't have in place till October, but we can issue a building permit. It'll be a permitted use. In Lincoln County, we have the most commercially zoned property outside of the municipalities than any county in the state. Not to mention, we're literally 500 feet away from the largest municipality in the state. And so it is a concern. We're gonna have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how are we gonna create regulations for this. And again, that's the process that we need to go through to have the county board update that. But that requires staffing. You know, we just went through, the last time I spoke before this board or the Board of Commissioners, we had an ordinance amendment for concentrated animal feeding operations. Our office spent 2 years on that process to get us up to that point. I mean, it's not a quick and easy process. But as you can see, and I question it too, I'll stand up with everybody and say, I anticipate 2 additional staff people for these items, but that's not gonna be enough. Those 2 people we could really use right now with our systems and processes. But with that, you know, the spacing needs and things like that, one of the other items that I pointed out was we're the only department that doesn't have a service window, but we have probably some of the top numbers of walk-ins. It would be helpful if our office had a service window. The second part of that is, again, as I mentioned, you know, John and the GIS department, they moved into our department in our conference room. And so we have a need for additional conference room space when we deal with individuals coming in from the public that want to talk confidentially, that want to talk about their projects, that want to know about projects. We don't have adequate meeting space for that right now within our department. And so it's kind of, those are the things that we met with. I appreciate it. This is great for me to work with a group that's looking long range and thinking comprehensively about what this county really needs as far as spacing needs. So with that, I guess I'd have answer any questions, and maybe John has any comments too. So. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toby.
Okay. Toby's really busy, and I'm in his office, so I'm really busy. Sometimes I wonder if I have an office. I work for P&Z, I work for equalization, I work for highway. I provide the mapping, geographic information. I provide support to different departments, whatever their workload is increases mine. I maintain the property maps that they use to administer and to do their business. We create the digital and printed maps they use in their office, and we distribute them publicly and online. We do site plan and permit review for planning and zoning. Floodplain administration is another hat that I wear. It's taken about 50% at least of my time now to do that. We also assign addresses, and we maintain the 911 routing data for dispatch here at the county. GIS trends. Our data requires constant updates, maintenance, and development. I don't have a lot of numbers. We're pretty constant. We have a certain number of roads. We increase our parcels. We have building permits. All those are in our map that we work on. Our workload is relative to those county and department and public needs. When we get requests for data or applications, we have 4 applications for voting, sales, our Parcel browser, which is used by the offices and by the public to do their work. Real estate, banks, private individuals use those. Information systems, data management software. We've been getting a lot of that. I sometimes think of myself as IT. We connect to all the databases in the county and link that to geographic data in our mapping. So the data that's in the equalization and the highway can be linked to our map elements and within the systems. New software, more software. We have to learn more software. I have to do floodplain and GIS, oversee my staff, and learn the software to administer versus do data maintenance and that oversight. Those are all increasing. Administrative responsibilities, Toby talked a lot about his responsibilities and how they're all increasing. Those all affect mine. I've been here 20 years. I started in the planning and zoning office. 10 years, I got my own office. I got another staff. That made 2. Now at 2020, I'm looking at, I need someone now. We've made do. We've made concessions. All other departments support us and help us. We help them. It's a family affair. At the bottom of this slide is a link to our Parcel browser. I think this becomes a public record. The work that we do is public. It allows us to put public records out to the public rather than others having to receive phone calls and take up a lot of time. So here's our department staff, myself filling 2 roles, director and administrator. Administrator of floodplain was in 2005, 2008. It really has consumed me. There are a lot of federal regulations, all building permits, all plans for subdivisions, that type of thing, have to be reviewed to protect the public from putting themselves in harm's way or causing harm by their development. My GIS analyst has stepped up and has done much of the maintenance and application development that's required of the office. Staff needs, well, 22 is a GIS technician. That's the earliest I can ask for one. I need one now. Again, like IT, we've been biding time. Budget's not there, space is not there. I've had 3 offices. We'd make do, make room. I share space with planning and zoning. We work together to for staff needs and space needs. We share the conference room, things like that. 2025, this is coming up. We have turnover. We have more floodplain technician needs. Somebody who can learn all of those federal rules, learn the GIS data to administer that. It's very complex. Timeline at the bottom. I was 1 in 2000. I was 2 in 2010. Linearly, that's 3 in 2020. And then 2025, 4, the bar goes up. I don't know what 2030 brings. Technology changes, things like that will be occurring. Just a note for those that didn't take the tour, this is the office we have now, the conference room, looking from the corner towards, you can see through the door is the planning director's office. So we've got desks facilitating up and down, a workspace. In our office was where we lay out and trim maps. And then we have another room, the printing room, where we have the regular printing and then the large scale maps for wall maps, that type of thing. We maintain over 50 public and administrative layers. Again, they're there. We maintain them. They change. We do corrections. A lot of change there. A lot of discoveries on over time. What data do we have? What does it mean? How do we display that so that we can understand it? It's a really complex thing, government. And all of the different departments that we serve have very different needs. Never dreamt I'd be in such a complex situation. More data, more apps, different departments, maintenance, development, those types of things. I'm going to risk something here and go back. Sometimes I get talking. So, mouse. See if it works. Is that going to come up? I talk about data, layers, maps. I'm very visual. We have a quiet office. We need to concentrate. work on things. I don't have an office. I'm noisy. As a floodplain administrator, I talk to people. It disturbs the creativity of the data editors, and they have to develop and create things. This is the map. Lincoln County GIS parcel browser, the main source of information. Townships, roads, towns, ever-changing boundaries of the cities. As you zoom in, a lot of different things occur. Names, if we go in all the way just to an area, aerial photos, parcels appear, and go in deeper and click on this, we can see that there's addresses, address points we maintain. These are used in the 911 also for routing their dispatch. And there's a problem now with, I don't know what it is, so I think it's the browser. Usually you would click on this, you would get the assessment data, jurisdictions, things of that nature. A pop-up would appear. I'm not going to go too much longer. Layer list. These are what I'm talking about. Each of these items that are in this map, including aerials, are listed in here. We can look at many different things. As floodplain administrator, I go immediately to the floodplain, and that appears. We have, oh, there goes the mouse. Risk map. Each of these things expands to be more information. Voting. We have the commissioner districts, school districts, legislative districts. These are all the things that we deal with. Planning, we get the zoning, corridors, high voltage. I'm not going to go any further. I just wanted to give you a view of that and see if there's any questions. This is where I work. This is where I live. Very visual and useful.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Could I ask, if you go into the specific parcel, how do you know when that date was taken of that particular parcel?
Date?
Yeah, if you put in like an address, like your own
Yeah.
parcel, how do you know when that date of that was taken? Is there,
The data that pops up will give
Yeah.
you some dates. It'll give you plat information, which represents time, when it was platted. Good question.
so, I mean, if you went in and looked at your own parcel,
Right.
what do you click on that? I mean, you get the buildings and all that kind of stuff, but how do you know when that overhead was taken, that satellite picture?
Oh, the aerial. Okay, I'm sorry. So over here, you can have 2020 aerials. Turn that off, you'll get an unnamed base map. You can go back to 2020, 2017, if I turn that on. Click that on, now I have 2017. Click on 2015. 2010 was a flood disaster. It's really helpful for locating areas that have flooded. If I take off the flood information, I will be able to see that they correspond to the areas that don't have vegetation. There's so much in here that we discover as we go through it. I'm asking, I think, in the report for one more person than I'm actually looking for. I was looking for one more in a 20-year time frame. We had that asked at one time. So it's 2 additional staff and office space for the director, office space for more technicians, and then a workroom that's off of the maintenance room, I'll call it. Any more questions?
Have a question for John? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is planning and zoning, or excuse me, Register of Deeds. Current space for Register of Deeds is 2,333 square feet, growth of 3 employees for a total of 8. And this is another one where with rearranging or different furniture systems, et cetera, that we believe with those 3 additional employees that no additional space would be needed.
Good evening. Becky Vanderbrook, Register of Deeds. Our space is adequate right now to serve the 3 that we, correct, are hoping to get. We could fit those in just with the floor plan that we have right now. Our main worry was our vault, but we're hoping with new storage systems and redesign that we are able to use that space that we currently have now.
Do you think you have adequate vault space?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that they show me wonderful new modern ideas. We have a wonderful new software that we're hoping to get a lot of our documents. I mean, they mainly are on the computer right now, but we're hoping that the people that come and search in our office, because it is a public office, will do that on the computers. So we maybe could need more computers. We have 3 public computers in the back. One other one that they are able to use as well. We a lot of times use that one. It's right out front in our counter. We use a lot that to speak with the public ourselves. So yeah, just depending on redesign and what we need first, the office space or the vault space, but I'm really hoping that we can use that. I mean, I think we could as well maybe push out into our office. I would rather use the space now because there might have to be restructured designs because it is a vault. So we haven't looked into any storage space yet. We discussed it in the meeting so that our older records are open to the public at all times, but maybe pushed off to the side because like our old actual deed books, hardly anyone looks at unless they are really wanting to read the fun cursive writing back in 1883. But
Becky, how much of an increase of volume has your department experienced?
We've definitely received a lot over this year. Obviously, due to COVID, the interest rates went way down, so that means many mortgages, which of course, when there's mortgages, there's documents to go along with those. Many property sales, as Carla talked about. So that is where we would need the extra people in our office. For the vault, we have to add to the index books. You know, we want the people that come in and search in the public to do it easily, so we try to make our books as simple as possible, which sometimes means that we use a lot of space because we don't want to cram all the additions together. The documents that are in our vault that we have to store or filed are mainly mechanics liens and tax liens, which they do get deconstructed after so many years. Our plats are what's really taking up a lot of our space. We have plats cabinets all along one wall pretty much, and there's 3 plat cabinets. 2 of them are being used now, 1 we just received. We maybe have room for some more. Like I said, it would get pretty tight in there, so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the, Jake, can we get that turned back on? Thank you. Next is the treasurer, currently occupy 2,679 square feet. Anticipated growth of 3 employees for a total of 13. And this is another example where we did not anticipate that growth in staff to equate to additional square footage.
Debbie Block, treasurer. I guess we don't anticipate needing any more space for our office. We have right now 10 windows, we utilize 8 of them. What I would need would be space in the back, possibly for just somebody answering the phones, doing just mail, title work. We get a lot of titles, insurance auto auctions moved out on the other side of the interstate, and we got from Friday alone, we had 119 titles just from them. So we are doing a lot more title work. I think even since COVID, we didn't close, we were open, we worked a lot of overtime, did a lot of stuff through the mail and had Dropbox. And I think ever since then, it's just been crazy. I think people are just buying and buying vehicles. But the dealerships, I think, had a lot of great deals for incentive for people to buy. So we're just busy with that all the time.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Veterans Affairs. They currently have 165 square feet, anticipating 2 additional employees for a total of 3, and we programmed 700 square feet, so a gain of 535 square feet.
I'm Susan Irons, Veteran Service Officer. My office provides services for veterans and their family members. I help them get the federal and state benefits that they've earned. It's tough being at the end, so I'll practice my 5B or 3B principle: be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. So the thing that I want to point out is Lincoln County, the number of veterans has continued to increase. And people maybe say, why is that? Because we have our World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veterans passing away, but we still see a steady growth. We are currently at war. We have been for the last 20 years. We also have our National Guard and reserves going on these deployments, and so we are increasing. Not only is our population increasing, but the people that have been here, they're becoming veterans, and so they're entitled to these benefits. So my office has become very busy over the last few years, and I can see that continuing to happen. Like Judge Hellman said, we are going to be like Pennington County sooner than we realize. Pennington County has 2 veteran service officers and an admin assistant, and that's what I'm looking at. And I have my .2 of an admin assistant right now, which I'm very grateful for. We're working toward that, and so that is what our space needs were. Another thing, I get families in my office, and 165 square feet with a family in there is not very doable. So that is why the additional space is needed. What are your questions?
This isn't a question, Susan, but what bothers me is I've been in her office many times, and the things that she deals with is just not giving information. She deals with a lot of individuals that have emotional situations, they have family situations, and for her ability to really administer to them and serve them, it is not a good facility. And the other thing that bothers me, quite honestly, while I'm selling this, is when you see veterans that are sitting outside of her office in a bench waiting to get to see her, I just think we can do better than that. And I think we owe our veterans more than that. So I'm a big pusher for her to get that extra square feet.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
What do we got left, Andrew?
Miscellaneous.
Okay, exciting.
Is that us?
So through discussions with all of the department heads, there were other comments that came up. The 3 spaces that are referenced here under miscellaneous, the room we're in right now, the multi-purpose room in the basement, and then just general conference room needs. There were some departments where we made the judgment call to include a meeting room dedicated to that space and function. Human resources is one of those where that makes sense for them to have that constant ability to schedule a space because it's their own. But we talked to other departments, such as the highway department. They currently have a conference room in their office suite right now. The strategy of growing by 2 staff and not adding square footage in that department was to take over the conference room and turn that into office space. And so there are general conference room needs that need to be thought through and addressed, and those a lot depend on what the ultimate solution is. So we've got some square footage punched in under conference rooms that would need to be discussed further and tested when we're working on solutions, but it's a placeholder for additional needs that we know that the various departments have. And those scheduling of general use and common spaces, obviously you put 50 more people in this facility over the next 5 to 10 years, that's only going to increase. And so that's something that we'll have to, I think, needs additional consideration and discussion.
So the square footage is there in terms of the general footprint?
Correct, yeah, so.
It's just an issue of when you get to the design phase, is it shared conference room space versus dedicated within
Correct.
each office?
Correct. And those departments that may have a dedicated conference room within their suite, what sort of utilization rate are they going to have? How much of the work week is that space available for others to utilize, even though it's in their office suite? So we're showing, we heard from a number of people, you heard those comments tonight, that this room is also used for that joint planning commission. It's not large enough. We heard comments from the auditor that this room isn't, or there are many times throughout the course of the year that this room isn't large enough for commission meetings. And so we were showing a larger commission room, showing a larger multi-purpose room of 900 square feet instead of 661, and then those conference rooms I just referenced. In all of the spaces, what we did very intentionally was, we don't have an idea of where that 2,500 square foot commission room will go in the building. We just know that the space needs are greater than the 1,458 square feet that they have now. So the solution will come. These are the numbers that just show the need for those various spaces. Last one, building maintenance. You want to speak, or should I just cover this quickly? John mentioned some needs for laundry storage, garbage collection, et cetera. Again, all of these things grow in necessity when you're putting more people in this facility. And so we had worked with him and identified 1,625 square feet of additional building maintenance and service type functions that would be needed. So lastly here, I've got some summary of the numbers. All of the things that you heard tonight, the square footages that we went through of additional needs, plus those additional needs of the sheriff's department for their administrative functions in the lower level, and also the state's attorney's office, all of that combined is a total net square footage of just shy of 11,000 square feet.
Are we going to have some specific information on, state's attorney, sheriff, 911 communications?
Yeah, we had, that was in the previous meeting.
So we're going off there, no updates, nothing like that?
Not that I'm
Okay,
aware
okay.
of.
It is, that spreadsheet has been updated with additional numbers, and that will be available, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So then the big picture summary, we did programming and space needs for administrative side, also the court side. And so when we look at those, there's that 10,879 for admin, 19,576 for courts. The total square footage across those two would be 30,455. And again, just a reminder, that is net square footage, so it's inside of walls. You need to take that times a factor to get to an approximate gross square footage, somewhere in the 30 to 35% factor, to accommodate for thickness of walls, mechanical chases, circulation, et cetera. questions or comments? Last thing I'll say quickly is I appreciated the conversations we had with all of the department heads. I think they put significant thought and consideration into their specific needs. And so, our numbers of assigning square footages are only as good as the thoughtful information that they all provided. So we appreciate their efforts and getting the opportunity to work with them.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, I have one question. So what is the square footage of the old courthouse and the new courthouse? For a comparison, you can.
So this structure
Yeah.
is across the basement through third is 62,000 square feet. I'll have to check here what the. Yeah, so there were 83,000 total square feet of building space between the two, so that would mean the courthouse building was 21,000 square feet from basement through third. So this 83,000 number is a gross number, where the 30,455 of additional square footage is a net number. Great question.
If you translate that from net to gross, what kind of square foot are you looking at?
40+ thousand. I mean, take the 30,500 square feet times 1.3 or 1.35, and that's going to be in the ballpark.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Those are the 30 to 35%
Yep.
is a kind of historical number that we utilize. The ultimate solution will dictate how efficient we are with circulation and other things.
Andrew, there's 0.22 acres that's available that's not built upon right now, is that right?
Yeah, that was the additional property to the west.
That's the old jail, right?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Other questions?
Anybody else before we get into the exciting portion of tonight's proceedings? Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it. Next thing we had on the agenda, thanks to our Deputy Chief State's Attorney, there was our proposed outline for developing a strategic plan. Bill, did you want to speak to it?
Sure. I think with the new numbers that the court has presented us, it looks like our timeline has went from looking at 10 years, our numbers are probably looking at 5 years. So that's probably moved on us. But one of the things I think that we need to do at this point is come up with goals and a strategic plan before we start setting forth how we're going to actually reach that. And so the intent was, I believe you had a strategic outline or a statement for what we were trying to achieve. And then I thought maybe the committee wanted to go through and set its goals and a time frame in order to get those accomplished. So that was the suggestion.
Well, what are the committee's thoughts? Ultimately, this committee, the objective is we have to report back to the commission on what improvements, if any, are recommended for the courthouse. Whether it's do nothing at all or build a brand new courthouse right next to us. It goes from 0 to 100. What is that report going to say? I think we have a lot of data and a lot of evidence in front of us that tells us where we might want to go, but that also has to be balanced with cost, has to be balanced with space available to build on, there's a lot of things that it has to be balanced with. And that's the whole purpose of this committee, to get public input to determine what the public thinks is the way forward in terms of improving the courthouse. You've heard a lot of presentations. I think we're at the end of phase one now of this committee, which was conducting and presenting the needs assessment of the users of the courthouse, right? So phase two now is determining how are we gonna meet those needs? Do we wanna meet those needs? Do we have to meet those needs? And that's what I wanna hear from all the committee members on. And I think what Bill is proposing is, how do we get there? What does this committee do in order to help present final report to the commission on what needs to be done?
So my suggestion is that if there's a discussion on, I think time frame is really important here, because I think we can have a, what are we doing today? Because we've heard the need. We've already outgrown the facility. We already have too many cases for what's here. So there's one need there. We probably need a 5-year goal and a 10-year goal. And I think the court laid out that you'd like to see a 20-year goal, that when we discuss this. If you start with your time frame, start working on that and what you need to fill in. From there, we can start talking about then, what is the adequate space? What's the goal? Is it that we want to plan for 5 years? Do we want to plan for 10, or do we want to plan for 20? Are we trying to rehab the old structure? Is that the goal? Is it to reuse it? Is it something that there's some interest in removing it and put something back in instead? That's for the committee to decide. Do you want to come up with one plan? Do you want to come up with 3? 5? How many? What do you want to explore? How do we want to get there? But we should probably set forth some goals here so that when we start to talk about it, we're all playing in the same ball field. Because if we just start spitballing everything right now, then we can go a lot of different directions. So that would be my suggestion, is that we lay that out so we have a time frame. What are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish as far as the space? And how long we want that space to be viable for? And that way we'll all be talking in the same.
Bill,
Go ahead.
I agree with everything you said. I'm struggling with this situation. We know we have an immediate situation that needs attention, because we cannot continue to do what we're doing. We don't have the space. Minnehaha County will be filled, and we need this situation immediately. And that's like, that's something that we should really try to figure out what we're going to do on that situation, because the other part, I'm all in favor of looking strategically down the road at a 5-year situation or a 10-year situation where where you're going to be able to strategically come up with a facility of some kind, and you articulated a couple, 3 of those. But on the other hand, if by doing that, we're still not addressing our most immediate need, we either have to put some portable facilities up here, we either have to go out and rent facilities, we either have to go out and get something so that we can get this backlog of process of these court cases that have to be taken care of. And it's a snowball going downhill. It isn't getting any smaller. And as Judge Rasmussen said, you're always trying to play catch up, and you never really get there. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm looking at 2 different scenarios. I'm looking at one, well, how do we address the most immediate situation that we have? But as Commissioner Ahrens has said, I agree with this long-range thing, that we have to, what we put in front of the taxpayers has got to be something that is going to address our needs for a minimum of 5 years. So I don't know I don't have any answers for that. But I do know we have an immediate situation that has a very high priority in my mind.
I would concur with Commissioner Schmidt. That's exactly how I was looking at this as this was going and playing out tonight, is we truly have 2 situations here. One is this absolute immediate now, how can we get us by? The other being what Mr. Golden just said, and that is our 5-year, our 10-year, our 20-year plan. I see it truly as 2 separate issues that I think is the way for us to proceed at this point. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Thoughts from other members?
I agree with what they both said.
I believe we need an answer right away for something temporary or whatever. And the way the numbers show, I think you better look at a 10-year plan rather than stop at 5, the way the numbers are growing too fast.
Dave?
Yes. I'm not sure if this, how to run this thing, pushed it a couple times, but,
Just hit it until it,
Talk
yeah.
really loud, how's that? I would agree. I think that, it's proven that is that on? Okay. It's proven that, this facility is, we've outgrown it in what, 7 years, almost 8 years, 9 years?
12?
2008.
Okay,
12.
2008.
Yeah.
So we have to look beyond 12 years, because we know that in the past 12 years, we've outgrown it. So we have to look at the immediate need, but I think we need to look beyond the 10-year mark to something greater than that, in my opinion.
Thank you. Larry?
I think the only prudent thing to do is a 20-year plan. I think you're wasting your time to do anything shorter than that.
Well, I think what I'm hearing then is, number one, we have to stop the bleeding, which means we have to address the immediate needs of the, what the judiciary has come here tonight and told us about is they need 1, maybe 2 courtrooms immediately. And a brand-new court facility, if that's what the public and the commission eventually would support, that doesn't happen overnight. But what these judges are telling us is they need assistance overnight. And so I think one of the tasks of this committee moving forward then can be, I think in rather quick order, is to make some kind of recommendation with regard to how do we find 2 more courtrooms? Do we remodel? Do we immediately turn the conference room downstairs into a courtroom? What do? We need to put the fire out. We need to immediately take action. How do we do it? So I think this committee in short order could do that, make a presentation to the commission. You know, I know some of the commissioners have started talking about that already in terms of these immediate needs. Nothing definite has been decided whatsoever. I think this issue just came up within the last 48 hours. Or at least presented to us in the last 48 hours, I mean. And so I think that's the first thing we do, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time, so we need to continue on with the overarching objective of trying to figure out, you know, what is our long-term solution for space in this county as well. So I guess the next question then becomes is, how do we do that? What does this committee do next in order to make a recommendation to the commission to figure out 2 courtrooms? Do we remodel space in this courthouse? Do we acquire space outside of this courthouse? What do we do? And I think that's where we need to start the discussion.
And how to go about, 1, identifying space inside this court or inside this building. But if you're gonna look outside of this area, how do you identify those locations? You know, are you looking in Canton for space? How are you gonna go about finding that?
Well, I think the first question I would have is what do the folks from UJS think about that? I assume they'd probably want to stay within the courthouse, but, you know, I guess I'd want to hear from them.
I don't want to step over what I think Judge Howman would already talk about, but the first issue that we have is security. And coming into the Lincoln County complex is wonderful because there's one place where people go through where everybody gets essentially going through a metal detector, which is crucial And then you also have deputies available to help provide security. And so that's I think, the most important part with some of the violence that has occurred nationwide. But ultimately, I think security is a primary situation. If we get off-site, if we're in another location, that's just going to increase the need for security to be provided. And if that's a magnetron that you wave over somebody, that's fine. But ultimately, that is a live body that's going to have to be there to help provide security, which, at least at this point, I'm in the courtroom upstairs in like 2A. Usually I don't have law enforcement in there. It's just me. And so that's fine. But I know that when people come into the courtroom, they've already gone through the metal detector. And so that helps allay some of the fear that, naturally, I believe any of our UJS employees has regarding security, as well as everybody else in this room. When you're working in the courthouse, there's always somebody that could show up that's very disgruntled over a zoning and planning issue, something else that happened somewhere, and they're aggrieved at the treasurer's office. You never know what's going to happen. But ultimately, if we could stay here, I think that would be best for, once again, falling into that security situation. But I'm talking way over Robin, and I'm going to let the presiding judge tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, I'm going to defer to Judge Rasmussen as the boots on the ground here in Canton, but I do agree, security is a primary concern for any courthouse facility. People commonly think about criminal cases as the ones that provide the most security risk to the participants and to the court staff, but it's truly your protection order proceedings, your custody proceedings, and your divorce proceedings. Historically and across the country, those are the ones that provide the most danger to people. You might think, two people going through a divorce or two people fighting over the custody of kids, those situations can get pretty tense, and those are what provide the most risk. And so I don't know of any place outside of the courthouse or this facility that would meet those security needs.
I agree.
Can I just have a suggestion, since we're open here on discussion. When we built this courthouse, there was a decision made by the commission at that time to put the security in as we have it. And it was not, it met at that time with some very skeptical situations. Knowing the needs that the court has, knowing the security that we have to have in today's society, if we were to move off of this facility into another off-site one in Canton located, my question is, would we be better off spending the money for an additional security situation as we have here in our courthouse, even putting a deputy on there? And Sheriff Swenson will probably call today asking for more people, obviously, if I make this suggestion. Or is it better money spent to make this room a courtroom, as you have talked about, Carl, the expenditures that are necessary to make this into a full-fledged courtroom? When you weigh the balance, what's the difference in value? I mean, I don't have an answer, and I don't expect you to have one. But there is an alternative if you did move off-site and you did provide the same amount of security that we have here. The cost of that would be X. To put this facility in as a courtroom using the data and the technology that you have to have is Y. What's the difference between the two? We don't have an answer. But it seems to me there is value in equating those two together.
Anybody else? I think the next question that needs to be answered is where then? If you hear this recommendation from the judiciary about what their concern is will the concern be met by staying here in the courthouse? If so, where do we find 2 courtroom spaces? We know where there's one already, in the conference room downstairs. I don't know where the second one would be. Could be in this room right here. Very well could be. Or what Commissioner Schmidt was saying is, if you did move it off-site, can you create the security bubble and posture needed in order to sufficiently alleviate any concerns from the judiciary. Or a third option is you could move administrative staff who don't have some of the same security threats that maybe the judiciary faces, and you move them off-site in order to make room for the judiciary within the courthouse here. So that's like a third option right there.
I believe one of the other things, security is very important, but also technology, because we have all of the infrastructure here for the technology, whereas if we have a new site, then we're gonna have to come with the technology as well.
Well, and I was just blown away by this figure that Judge Howman gave out earlier of $25,000 per courtroom licensing fees for CourtSmart. That's outrageous, but I get it. I understand it. It's what has to be done. You have to create a record in these court cases. And I don't know if you'd want to put the infrastructure inside of a building off-site as opposed to putting it in here in the courthouse. Now, I don't know how that works either.
The other side of that is, at least for the criminal side, maybe some civil would overlap too, but at least for the criminal side, we have the clerk of court's office. Oftentimes when people leave court, they need to go turn in a driver's license or go pay a ticket. The clerk of court's office is here, or they need to go to court services. Court services office is here. So moving just one portion of the judiciary out and away from those other court services would be difficult to manage, I think. Because right now I can tell someone, go down one floor to court services, they can do it. People get lost walking across a hallway, nevertheless, moving to a different location to follow up with someone or to go pay a ticket, or if they need just a service in the courthouse.
And this isn't just a fix for 6 weeks or even 6 months. This is a fix that has to be in place for potentially 3 years. So I think 3 years is considered long-term around here, isn't it? Given the kind of growth we're facing. So
Why are you saying 3 years?
I'm just throwing out the term 3 years because if a recommendation came down to build in addition to this courthouse, that doesn't happen overnight. And I think what I'm hearing from the public is they want the public to vote on it. So it has to, that decision would have to be referred to the voters, and then the voters would get a bite at the apple. They would get to make that decision, and that has to take place at the next election, which is, at a minimum, you could do the June primary of 22, or you could do the November general of 22, and then add 18 more months onto that for construction.
What are your financing options to pay for the new courthouse?
I think it's a good question. Obviously, general obligation bonds are one financing mechanism.
Are there others?
Yes. The other one is the $11.8 million that Congress has set aside for Lincoln County through the COVID bill. So that's another set of funds, but we don't know what the rules are yet to be able to tap into that. So Commissioner Schmidt, who sits on the board and does the work with NACO, has started looking into some of that. They are saying, federal government, Treasury Department has not issued the regulations, but the scuttlebutt is that remodeling is a legitimate purpose for which those funds could be tapped into. And then, of course, a donation from you as well, Larry.
You may want to also consider that one of the summer studies that the legislature is looking at is building courthouses and jail facilities for counties that have not done so up to this point in time. So I'm going to throw that out as a potential third option, and I would certainly hope that Lincoln County would be at the table during that process. As I've thought that through, if there is additional COVID money for the state to distribute for that purpose, I think you should hear Minnehaha County saying, well, shouldn't we get some of that money because we already paid, and we shouldn't, Lincoln County shouldn't get money because you didn't do anything, and I agree with that. My solution would be that the money that is distributed statewide for that purpose would be on a per capita basis, and those ones that have thought this through and built before should get the same amount of money on a per capita basis, but they should be required to put it to their debt, which would reduce what the taxpayer has to pay. So I think there are three. My next question is, how soon can we get a facility designed so we could start construction?
It's a question for Andrew. I think the term, I don't want to misspeak. How many months have you said it takes?
I think a project like this would be 4 to 6 months from hiring an architect through completion of construction documents.
And how long is the bidding process? Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had this discussion, so he is the guy to go to answer this.
So bidding process, it would depend on what delivery method was used. If it was design, bid, build versus construction manager, you can expedite things with multiple bid packages if you do construction manager, which shortens that 6-month window between starting design and starting construction. So if there's variables that need to be discussed on the county level to decide delivery methods.
Thank you.
That stimulate any more thoughts or questions on behalf of anybody else?
We use construction manager risk to build 2 floors on top of the Minnehaha County Courthouse.
Say that again?
We use construction manager risk to build the top 2 floors on the Minnehaha County Courthouse.
Thank you.
It was the same situation when we built this building as well.
Anybody else? I know it's a lot to take in. It's like drinking from a fire hose, but,
Joel, if I can.
yes, sir.
I've sat on a lot of these types of committees in my years on the commission. I think one of the crucial things is that if we're going to be making a recommendation to the full commission, it's going to be really important that we also have at least the press releases out to educate the public out there. If we're going to get funding, if we're going to go ahead and sell this to the voters, every time that this comes before the commission, we need to sell it. And that means that not only the commission, but unfortunately, the people in this room, we need to educate people in Lincoln County. And I was lucky enough to be on the commission with Carol Tweet and Ann Hayek, and they did a wonderful job of selling just about everything we needed to have done. In the 5 years that we had to opt out in Minnehaha County, we never had a petition taken out. I think a lot of it has to go to educating the public as to the need. And I know that we've had some challenges down here in Lincoln County related to, I want to say not a tax protest, but some angry people out there that are upset over their tax bills. And part of this is going to be the selling process. And so I think that as a recommendation coming to the commission, part of that is going to be a receptive commission with some interesting questions, but also to educate our voters, because they don't understand what the need is. They don't, all they know is that you're going to be hiking up my tax bill. And if that's the message that they hear, then, you know, you can just build some Morton buildings and we can call that the county. And, you know, some people would be fine with that. But ultimately, I'm hoping that we also have a strategic plan in place to go ahead and to educate people.
It's an issue. I agree, Judge, and we can't put the cart in front of the horse. And once we get our plan down, we need to present it to the public and allow all the communities to come and comment on it. We flesh out what their concerns are. We hopefully answer what their concerns are, alleviate concerns, take their input and feedback, then have a commission vote, not the other way around. Because otherwise you'll just keep building up resistance and resentment from the community if they feel like their voice is not heard.
I concur 100% with Judge Peckus, what he just said. Lest we not forget here in Lincoln County what happened not even a year ago. And that was all because of a lack of openness and transparency. And you know the end result of that. The citizens spoke loud and clear through a vote.
So given the fact of what we heard tonight from the judiciary, we do have something immediate pending in front of us, and I think that kind of means that our agenda has changed for the next meeting with this committee. And I think in the meantime, for the next committee agenda, we need to identify, if what I'm hearing from the committee correctly, is I gotta identify one or maybe two courtrooms that can be put into operation for the judiciary. Does anybody have any objection to that, or any addition or deletion, or think I'm going down the wrong way? Or is there consensus on the fact that that is what we need to look at as a committee? I'm not saying you gotta support it. I'm just saying, are you supportive of looking into it and looking at it?
So what I heard was looking at remodeling inside of this building, or looking at this building for those two courtrooms.
That's what I'm hearing from the judiciary here tonight. We've got 3 circuit court judges appointed by, so, you know, who are telling us we need to look inside of this building for space.
Okay. Do you want us to?
I may be the only dissenting one, but I think in addition to that, we need to look outside. I don't know. I mean, if we're exploring all options, and I'm not saying that I'm in favor one way or the other, but I would also like to be able to explore other options that may exist in Canton and address whatever other situations may be required from security and other things that may or may not be desirable.
We will absolutely do that. There are no sacred cows, and every option will be explored.
Do you want that for both possible courtrooms or possible for administration staff? Or both?
Both. There's no reason why we can't create multiple courses of action here to look at and review. And I think that's what we put on for our next meeting. And in the meantime, we'll do a little bit of research into it, and we've got to get it done. Anybody else? Anybody want to take advantage of public comment, or everybody want to go? All of these meetings have opportunity for public comment. So if anybody from the public or the committee wants to say anything right now, now is your opportunity. Going once, going twice. All right, thank you, and have a good evening.